Bowhead Futures presents Digital Health at the Front Lines. We explore how healthcare is shifting by deep diving with the doctors transforming the system from the inside out.
We're moving into this world where tech plays a role in every aspect of our lives, but we're also moving into this world where people are starting to ask more questions about what's happening with their data. Obviously we're using like 15 apps a day. Who's using that data, who's selling it, who's benefiting from it. So you're probably going to start being asked a lot of questions around privacy and security if you're not already. And I'm curious, thinking maybe a few years ahead, how can we rethink the medical team dynamic? Are we going to need to have somebody who's present, who's like, the digital health lead?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think all, especially large hospital organizations, medical organizations, need to be thinking about the future of remote monitoring, the future of how do we incorporate all the data that is coming in from patients. So again, I'm an electrophysiologist, so we have home monitoring of pacemakers and ICDs. Where patients have monitors built in, that they're given at the time of implant of their device. That is, they just keep by their bedside and it checks their device every night, depending on what type of device it is. And we have specific teams that are doing that monitoring. But part of the challenge is it's really tough to find qualified staff for something like that. And that's just one example. You have people who are trying to do home monitoring of glucose management in patients with diabetes. I think as an organization, you need to be thinking not in these, okay, well, our endocrinologists are looking at diabetes, our cardiologists are looking at pacers and ICDs, or they're looking at, there are these pressure sensors that can be implanted in the lungs to measure essentially the blood pressure in the lungs is like, which is a measure of heart failure, a marker of heart failure. And you have all these different groups that are doing some sort of remote monitoring. I think organizations should be thinking big picture. How are we going to have one large team that's overseeing all of this to say, how are we going to be managing this data in some safe way? How are we going to be integrating this with the medical record? How are we going to be integrating this with cardiac care? And while you have an overarching theme or group within an organization, then you have on the individual level, the people who actually understand what that data may be relevant to the patient and interacting with that patient. And that's just on the medical level. I think the question about how to integrate these more consumer wearables and those technologies, I don't quite know how we're going to do that going forward. And as is true with a lot of medicine, a lot of it has to do with reimbursement. It's about, are we going to get paid for these things? Because if we're not going to get paid, then we can't afford the staff that is going to have to be managing these things. And from a policy perspective, we're always behind. These technologies are always pushing things forward, and we're always behind. We're using laws that are 20, 30 years old and trying to figure out how do these privacy concerns apply to these new technologies or other aspects of things. So I think it's going to be a challenge to try and keep up with it from a policy perspective because we are seeing such rapid changes in technology. But I do hope that at some point we are able to make new rules, laws, guidelines, whatever it is to provide some framework for this.